What is going on, people, and welcome to another video in the Vehicle Electric series. We covered batteries last week, and this week we're going to cover charging your leisure batteries or your auxiliary batteries. So there's three different ways you can charge your vehicle batteries. One of them is solar charging, the other one is mains charging, and the third, charging using your existing vehicle infrastructure, such as your alternator. We're going to cover on all of these different charging applications during this series, but for this video in particular, we're going to cover the last two. I'm going to cover solar charging later on in the video when we go on to the solar panel aspect of this vehicle install guide. So if you've just been Googling battery chargers for your vehicle, you've probably come across loads of options, loads of different types of stuff, and you're probably a bit overwhelmed by the amount of selection you can go for. And if you're not that clued up in the field, there's probably going to be lots of phrases getting bandied around that are probably going to confuse you. So I'm going to try and unconfuse you, help you to understand some of the phrases what are being used, and make sure you're only buying something that you actually need. One thing I will say is definitely stay to the end of this video. I don't say that on every video, but for this video in particular, stay to the end, because I'm going to give you some tips on the end on how not to waste money when buying these. First of all, I'm just going to cover the data and make sure you understand what you're shopping for, and then at the end I'm going to give you some advice on maybe some stuff that you don't need to buy if you buy certain products. So initially going into it, let's go into mains chargers. So you'll see mains chargers ranging from super cheap right the way up to a couple of £100. Now what's the difference? You can get away with a normal cheap mains charger for charging your battery. One thing to consider when you're shopping for it is make sure it works in the battery what you've got. So if you've got a gel battery or a lithium battery or just a normal lead acid battery, make sure that charger what you're about to buy is suitable for that type of battery. Generally, chargers will be good for all batteries apart from lithium, and it will be an extra type of charger that you're going to need for lithium. So where does the price range come from? So you can get your super basic chargers that are just going to charge the battery on a constant feed, and it'll keep going and keep going and keep going. It's going to have no smart technology in there that's going to restrict charging rates, which is going to help in the long run keep your battery at a better quality for longer. As you start getting into your more expensive mains chargers, you're going to be starting getting different charging methods. A few of the things you might have seen banded around are test charging, bulk charging, absorption charging, these sort of phrases. I'm just going to go into some of these phrases and just explain what they are. So test charging, in essence, is testing the battery status. Not all battery chargers can do that, so it's going to evaluate what sort of status your battery's in so it can select a more suitable charge for that battery. Your bulk charging, it's just a fast charge, so it's going to detect that your battery is very low, and it's going to try and get as much current in there as possible to raise the voltage of your battery. Bulk charging generally is only used for batteries that are very low. Reconditioning features. Now I would massively recommend getting a reconditioning feature in your battery charger if the budget allows. What this basically means is when your battery discharges to a point which is normally dangerous for the battery's life, or it's past the advised points, so let's say you drop it below the advised voltage of that particular battery what you've got, a recondition charge is specifically aimed at bringing it out of that deep discharge state. Absorption charge, and that's going to be basically at the latter end of your charging process. It's in essence going to slow the charge down. And what will happen inside some of these chargers, there'll be a set voltage, so when it detects that it hits that voltage, it's going to slow the charge down, and it's going to just inject that last little bit a bit slower, which is better again for the longevity of the battery. Float charging, and this is going to be something that's achieved after the absorption charge, and it's basically once your battery reaches 100%, it's going to sit there on a float charge, whereas your cheaper ones might still be trying to charge the battery, sometimes overcharging them. With these more expensive chargers, it will enter like a float charging stage. And there probably is some other terms you're going to see banded around there and different types of charging. I mean, it wouldn't hurt to have more safety features with your battery charger, but really the ones that I've mentioned there are the not so much important ones, but the ones that you really want to be looking out for if you were looking for some. Generally, if you're looking for a branded sort of charger, Victron are quite well established within the field. Any of their more recent products would be suitable to you. They are a bit more on the expensive side, but they are a tried and tested product. And as far as buying cheap or buying twice, that sort of aspect of it, Victron, people have had real good experiences with this brand, and if you have a look on the forums, you'll see their names popping up all the time. Now we'll move on to your traditional split chargers. Now basically what this is it's an upgrade to the relay type of chargers what you have. So in days gone by, you would have a relay that would open and shut depending on whether your vehicle's on or off, which would stop the batteries discharging through each other. But now we go for something called split chargers, which is usually a voltage sensitive relay that in essence, it detects when the alternator is giving out an output. So basically you've got an alternator in your engine bay, that gives out an output that charges your vehicle battery. You connect your leisure battery to that vehicle battery, but in between that connection, you're going to put a split charger. When your alternator comes on, the voltage goes up, the split charger closes the circuit and charges your leisure battery. When the alternator then goes off, the split charger opens the circuit and that circuit is now broken, so batteries cannot discharge into each other. It's a very effective method if you have some of the older type of vehicles, T5s and prior, but if you have a newer one, this sort of system's not going to work for you because we have like smart alternators now. In essence, what that means is the alternators don't work as they used to, whereas they will give out a constant like 14.4 or above charging rate. These split chargers don't work with the newer system. But for prior to that, if you've not got a smart alternator, which if you've got a T5 and before, you probably don't have a smart alternator or a smart battery management system in your vehicle, these sorts of things are cheap, reliable and perfect for what you need. I've just got some stats off one of the split charging relays that I found off the internet. Durat do a good one and Split Charge also do one that is very, very similar. The circuit closes at 13.3 volts and it opens back up at 12.65 volts. It opens back up at 12.65 volts, like I've said before, to stop those batteries then discharging each other. Because if you've got a closed circuit all the time, whatever the strongest battery is, it will discharge into the weaker one, and it's only when you reach that equilibrium point that charge will not be transferred between the two. So if you had like an 11.8 volt completely flat leisure battery, eventually your vehicle battery would drain into that leisure battery if you didn't have an effective split charger, which is why you just can't connect a cable between the two. So then, if you do have a newer vehicle and the traditional split charger is not going to work for you, you're going to be looking for a DC to DC battery charger. Now these are a little bit more complex. They're kind of a blend between the two of the previous chargers we've just spoke about. And by that I mean, they're going to work with your 12 volt system, you're not going to need mains hookup, but it's going to be very similar in the sense that it's going to have those it's more of a charger rather than just a link between the two batteries. So it's probably going to have those charging methods we went through earlier in the video, which is going to be better for your battery longevity. And like we said before, because the smart alternator is not going to work with a split charge relay, a DC to DC battery charger understands how your smart alternator works, and it's basically going to give power as a normal battery charger would, rather than just being a circuit that's opened and closed. One of the more popular brands on the DC to DC battery chargers are the CTEK range. Although I've not fitted one of these myself personally, I've seen loads of good reviews about user fits on these, and they seem relatively simple and they're quite modular, so you can expand into different interfaces later on in the build if you decide you want more stuff. And one thing I will say with all these chargers we just spoke about is always make sure that you've got one rated correctly for your system. That works in two ways. You don't want too small and you don't want to restrict your system and potentially making it dangerous by running more current than you should do through it. But you also don't want one too big because that's going to be more expensive and you're going to be wasting your money. So make sure you know what sort of batteries you're looking to charge and make sure your charger is relevant for that application. But if you have the choice between going smaller or bigger, definitely go bigger. It's always good to have something more capable than what you need than under capable for what you need. So as I said at the beginning of the video, I'd give you a reason to stick around to the end. So now we understand the chargers and different charging methods, what we've got. You'll be pleased to know that you might not have to buy some of these chargers because some of the other things that you buy might already have chargers included in them. So for example, a lot of inverters have mains chargers included within the inverter. So once you install that, you can then mains charge. When you do your electric hookup, you can then mains charge from your inverter to your vehicle batteries. That's what I've fitted into mine. So that my inverter is also my mains charger. And then moving on from that, some of the DC to DC chargers, more specifically the CTEK one, have capability to do solar charging as well. So if you're waiting for the later video where you're going to be looking for solar chargers and solar charge converters, you might be able to save some money by getting the CTEK and not spending money on the solar charge converter if that's the route you did want to go. So how have I done my build? I've not specifically gone for a CTEK, and I've done this just because I wanted to completely isolate my main battery from my leisure battery. I wanted to have that ability to know that there's no points of failure and there's no connections there. Now I've not seen reports of the CTEK failing or other DC to DC battery chargers failing, But my worry was that in the event of a failure, I would then drain my vehicle battery and be stuck somewhere without the ability to drive off. So I went for a larger rear install, and I've installed more of a solar capability to my vehicle. So I rely mainly on the solar and the mains hookup. That's seen me well so far. I've never been caught out by it. But if I do ever get to the point in the future where I maybe do need a vehicle charger and I need a DC to DC charger, I'll definitely be going down the CTEK route. One thing that I did install is, because my leisure setup is so powerful in comparison to the vehicle, I've actually installed a small charging system that basically means that my solar panels keep my vehicle battery trickled up as well. So rather than asking my vehicle to charge my leisure setup, I'm actually charging my vehicle from my leisure setup. That's a very, very cheap install, and I'll try and get a picture of the box that I've installed. And again, it's basically a voltage sensor relay. It's not as fancy as some of the bigger ones. It does a very slow trickle charge, but it does the job at keeping my vehicle topped up when I'm opening the doors, shutting the doors, moving around the vehicle, activating sensors. The occasional time when the radio's on without the vehicle on, it does a good job at keeping that vehicle battery in a tip-top condition, so I can always use it when I'm ready to drive away. I hope this video was informative for you. If you haven't seen my previous videos on batteries, definitely go away and watch that. There's going to be plenty of videos to come after this as well. You can watch the main video, which in the description it will have links to every single video what you need. You can use that as almost a content to this video series. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.